Andy Burnham is going to become Prime Minister. Keir Starmer is going to be leaving office.
Keir Starmer can either have a bloody exit or a dignified exit.
If you get left behind by the herd, that's it. You know, you're extinct.
It's quite something to say, Harriet. Hello and welcome to Electoral Dysfunction with me, Beth Rigby.
Me, Ruth Davidson.
And me, Harriet Harman.
Now, we are recording this on Friday afternoon, so thanks for bearing with us because we are a bit later today, but that is because there is news. There is so much going on. I've just raced back from Makerfield to chat to both of you. Ruth, you've hopped across the Irish Sea to join us. You've stopped halfway in a hotel because your flight was delayed. You have literally taken one for the team. Your family have deserted you. But it is all go because Andy Burnham has just stormed the Makerfield by-election. He is no longer the King of the North, the king across the water. He's now a member of Parliament, Labour's newest member of Parliament, and he is probably heading down to Westminster after a period of rest over this weekend, I'm told, to try and challenge in some form Keir Starmer to become Prime Minister. So we are now really in it. It is going to be a big week next week. This is a seismic by-election. It really was as consequential as we said it could be. And we've already got reports, and I'm picking up that there are ring rounds of the cabinet. Starmer's testing what support he has up in Makerfield. Burnham allies are talking about the cabinet needing to step up and try and encourage Starmer to step down. One person put it to me like this: Keir Starmer can either have a bloody exit or a dignified exit, but exit he will, and it is up to him to decide. Harriet, you've been on the phones. You probably know far more than I do. What do you think?
Well, I hate to quote Boris Johnson, but do you remember when he said, when he recognised that he had to leave government, and he said about his ministers and his MPs, the herd is moving? Well, I have to say that it's not today that the herd is moving. They are stampeding.
Wow, OK. He said when the herd moves, it moves. And he was referring to effectively being dragged out of number 10 as he sort of held on, I imagine, on the curtains with his fingertips. And junior ministers were resigning, cabinet ministers were resigning. He just lost the confidence of his government. Number one, do you think that's where Keir Starmer is getting to with his party? And are you in the herd? Have you moved?
Well, I don't think it's getting to that. I think it's got to that. That's where it is. Ministers have moved, not just cabinet ministers that we've seen publicly, but junior ministers now. And so many of them are so regretful about it. And they're saying, it's not where I wanted to be, but that's where we are. And, you know, so many backbenchers are moving. And there's three things that they mention: the council elections, John Healey's resignation, and then Andy Burnham's unbelievable triumph in Makerfield, which made them feel hope that they could breathe easy and feel that actually we don't have to be subjected to the absolute abomination of a Nigel Farage prime ministership.
Let me cut to the chase. Do you think that Keir Starmer should now set out a timetable for his departure?
What I think he should do is recognise that there is a challenge. At the moment, he's sending out cabinet ministers to say, actually, there isn't a challenge. There is a challenge. So I think he's got to recognise there's a challenge, and he's got to recognise that the most important thing for a prime minister is to have the support of the members of parliament. That's why you're entitled to be the prime minister, because you command a majority in the House of Commons. And Andy Burnham is going to have to ask those Labour MPs to do very difficult things. It's going to be very tough.
So
and in order to command their loyalty, he needs some legitimacy. But otherwise, there's no trace. There's just the by-election, and suddenly he's walking in the front door of number 10. So I think there does need to be some grounding of this, but I don't think it's going to be a long, drawn-out process.
We've now got 100 MPs calling for Starmer to go. I understand that he is calling around some of the cabinet to try and work out what support he is. Meanwhile, I understand that what's going on is the Burnham camp are trying to turn the screw on Starmer. They want him to set out a timetable. They don't want it to be messy. They're calling around MPs, trying to get support to try and show Keir Starmer that overwhelmingly the party won't back him. And you were saying that the herd moves. It seems to me you've moved. What do you think might happen next week?
Well, I've been doing a lot of thinking about we need an animal expert on this programme to tell us about herds, because the point about herds is that if you get left behind by the herd, that's it. You're extinct. And there is this sense of collective movement. And a lot of people who I've been speaking to this morning, MPs and ministers, they're in two places at once. They're disappointed that we're in this position. They know that people don't like change of Prime Minister. They wish the first 2 years of this government would have been loads more successful and Keir Starmer would be truly popular. So they're disappointed that we've got to this. But they also feel really optimistic now. They feel a real sense of hope and possibility with the prospect of change. So people's voices have changed. They've actually, they're sounding a bit more upbeat. Their WhatsApps they're sending me have got loads of thumbs up and, this, biceps emoji is coming in. People are feeling stronger and more positive. And I think the only concern I've got, I think it's going to happen that Andy Burnham is going to become Prime Minister. Keir Starmer is going to be leaving office. But what I want to do is to make sure that as the new Prime Minister, somehow the Parliamentary Labour Party is able to express its support for him so that there's some legitimacy for him coming into the Premiership. I don't want him to be walking in through the door as Keir Starmer shuffles out the door and then suddenly it's changed, but nobody can see what it's grounded in. I think there's not going to be a full-on contest amongst the membership, but there does need to be some endorsement process. And I think the nomination process is insufficient for that, because the nomination process is just, we want this person to be able to stand. Andy Burnham, if he's to be Prime Minister, needs the Parliamentary Labour Party to endorse him as their Prime Minister, because he's going to have to ask them to do very difficult things and to call on their loyalty. He needs to be saying, you chose me and therefore I'm going to call on your loyalty and we're going to work together on this. But broadly speaking, that's a bit of a sort of process point and a legitimacy point. But I think things have really changed, and I don't think there's going to be any question of a timetable. Some people were talking about September. We cannot have ministers in a state of paralysis all the way through the summer. I think what's going to happen is that I'm going to Ibiza, but I don't think Andy Burnham's going to be going on holiday. I think he is going to, I do not expect him to see him with Calvin Harris and me in Ibiza. I think he is going to be, he's going to be like Gordon Brown. Do you remember when Gordon Brown took over and he went on his summer holiday in the southwest in a suit and tie and sat on the beach in his suit and tie for about 5 minutes and then came back to London? I don't think Andy Burnham is even going to be going on his summer holidays, because he knows people want change. So he will hit the ground running. By the time we come back in September, he will have done loads of things from the manifesto that people want to see happen. And by the time we get to conference in September, we'll be at a complete different pace of change.
There's so much to unpack.
Do I sound
there.
like I'm in the
First of all,
herd?
Harriet,
Oh my God, I'm in that
herd.
herd.
Sorry, before we first of all, can someone clip that up with a Calvin Harris soundtrack and put a disco ball above Harriet Harman's head? Thank you. And that's all I would like to add to that.
The first thing I want to unpack is, are you going with Angela Rayner, or are you on the decks at Manumission?
Is Ange going to be in Ibiza as well? I think she's probably going to be hitting the ground running in the UK. I'm going to be the only one partying this summer. Honestly, they're going to want to make a big pace of change. Gordon Brown.
Well, yes, I don't think he'll be wearing the same sort of tan suit jacket and open neck shirt as Gordon Brown, though, because he'll be doing full-on man of the people centrist dad t-shirt with like a Paul Smith kind of bomber jackety thing over the top, I'm sure. But I get that that's what you want, Harriet, because you're Labour and you want it to all be seamless and you want to start feeling like you've got forward momentum. But there's quite a lot to unpack there about what can and can't happen. I mean, if I was a member of the Labour Party, I would not for 1 second stand by and just say that the MPs get to decide and I don't get a vote on who my leader is. I think as well, the idea that if I'm the Prime Minister, that's only the second Prime Minister this century to win a Labour majority since the war, I don't think I'm walking off into the distance just to let Andy Burnham have the keys to the kingdom without digging my heels in and going, actually, Andy, you've got a job first, which is see how you wanted a different job. And we've got a by-election for your job as Mayor of Manchester. You got to get yourself back to Manchester and make sure we don't lose that to reform. Thanks very much, mate. You don't just get to swan in and measure up the curtains in number 10. So I totally understand why that's the dream for Labour people that feel like this has been 2 years wasted and that there's forward momentum that can happen. But I think you're in dreamland if you think it's just all the dominoes are just going to fall your way.
Well, I don't think they will just fall like that, but I think there's a big role for the deputy leader, Lucy Powell, who is an excellent woman, and another excellent woman who is Jessica Morden, who is the chair of the PLP. And those two women, I think, needs to get 3 men in a room, lock them in. Those men are Andy Burnham, Wes Streeting, and Keir Starmer, and not let them out until they've agreed a swift process, because ultimately we don't want a wrangle about the process, and we don't want a situation where cabinet ministers are resigning to try and push Keir Starmer out. I think if he can acknowledge there is a challenge and lean into that challenge and put his case. But, you know, Ruth, one MP who's been a real big Keir Starmer supporter, who's now signed up for Andy Burnham, said to me that he doubts there's even 30 MPs now who actually believe it's possible for Keir Starmer to stay. Not that they don't necessarily more than that want him to stay, but they just feel it's over.
I mean, look, apart from the marmalade dropper of Harriet Harman raving to Calvin Harris in Ibiza, and yes, I am coming and would like to join in, you just said that you think Andy Burnham is going to be Prime Minister. I mean, you actually said that. It's quite something to say, Harriet.
Well, it's the elephant in the room, really. And I think that I would have wanted it to be different. I would have wanted Keir Starmer to be really successful and popular and have the full backing of the Parliamentary Labour Party. But we've had the terrible council elections, but we've had John Healey resigning. Now we've had Andy Burnham turning around all these voters who'd gone to reform in the council elections. And then they go, oh, there's Andy Burnham. We're going to vote for him. And then he gets more votes than all the other parties put together. And the thing about those voters in Makerfield is that it's not just spin in relation to Andy Burnham. The reason why they like him is because they know what he's done. They like what he's done, and they like how he's done it. So they like the fact that he's worked with business, that he's not been, you know, he's been prepared to work with Tory councillors in different parts of the Greater Manchester area. So it's solidly based. It's not ephemeral. It's after 10 years of them knowing him. Usually when people know me for 10 years, they've gone off me. You know, no, that is
it's
true,
not
I'm afraid.
True. Scratch that from this podcast. I'm not having that broadcast.
But the thing is that it's solidly based. They've seen what he does. They like what he does. And, you know, I said on the last podcast that one of the things about Andy Burnham is that he's likeable. And somebody said to me, you shouldn't have said he's likeable. That is trivial. Actually, you should be talking about his policies. But actually, likability is people feeling he makes them feel seen.
The thing is though, Harriet, and going back to what Ruth you just said, that very, very pertinent point about where Starmer's at, and the idea that you can just walk into Downing Street and he'll just go, fair enough, I'm not very good at being PM, off I go. I just, from my conversations with Keir Starmer's team, interviewing him at the G7 this week, it's just not where his head is at. And I've been making a lot of calls on this in recent days, just kicking the tires on it. And the thing that comes back to me that you said, Ruth, is about earning it. I think from what I understand about Keir Starmer, he is of the view that if you want to come and take the prime ministerial chair from me, you've got to win that chair. You've got to prove yourself. You've got to be put through your paces. You have to earn the right to become Prime Minister, and that is not the Makerfield by-election. And you can see him putting obstacles in the way already, can't you? Because the thing Starmer said this morning in response to the victory was, now the Labour movement's got to pull together and win the Greater Manchester mayoralty, which is what he said at the G7. And I think you're right, Ruth. I think the idea of the Burnham crew, that Starmer is going to kind of see the light and understand really where Harriet's saying the party is at and make a dignified exit. He might get there in the coming days. He might do if the pressure is such. But I don't think that's where he's at.
Can I ask the two of you a question? Because I'm up in my little Celtic-shaped sort of hole and nest, so both in Scotland and now today in Ireland. So I'm not in Westminster at the moment, and I'm guessing that there's a lot of frantic conversations happening. There's people phoning each other, chatting to each other, briefing, counter-briefing, and all the rest of it. And I'm just, from what I'm seeing online and kind of knowing the way politics works, I'm seeing the Prime Minister's team briefing that he's raising lots of money in case there's a challenge. I've seen that Andy Burnham has launched a website and he's got stuff going on, and he's done his rally, and his speech was very tapered to you actually could almost hear the gears grind as he pivoted from Makerfield to the country. I mean, it was almost an astonishing piece of political theatre. But I don't hear much from West, so I don't know if him and his team are cracking on and trying to line their people up. And is anything happening from the outriders of the Prime Minister of actually speaking to people, or are they just briefing that they've got money? Because these are very different things when it comes to being able to survive somebody shaking the tree.
Mm.
Well, I've spoke to a lot of junior ministers and MPs this morning, and they've all had Andy Burnham or Andy Burnham's team on the phone, talking to them and asking for their support, asking them to sign a letter if they're a minister that they no longer support the Prime Minister, asking them if they're a backbencher, if they'll sign his nomination papers. So they've been on the phone. Wes has been talking to people in person and has been on the phone and is still on the phones to people. And nobody I've spoke to has heard from the Prime Minister. So when he says he's fighting back, I have heard that he's raised money, but the fight back starts with the PLP, and he's not actually doing that. And I find that really baffling, because they should be his troops.
It's so interesting you say that, Harriet, because I've spoken to a couple of people around the PM today, all familiar with a bit of what's going on. And one person said to me, the thing about Keir Starmer is he kind of doesn't take it in or see it, because he doesn't see around political corners until it sort of hits him. So he's not necessarily anticipating what you're talking about the mobilisation of other campaigns. And, one of his key people was saying to me today, just shortly before I came to the podcast, I was saying, is he calling people round, what's going on? That from a Keir Starmer point of view, there is not yet a leadership race, which I know that you'll roll your eyes at, because the leadership race is going on even if a formal challenge hasn't been laid. But, someone that was familiar with what was going on after Anas Sarwar said he was standing down. They said to me that they don't sort of feel that coordinated activity going on at the moment because there isn't a leadership election. But of course, on the other side of that, I asked Lou Haig up in Makerfield this morning, the former Transport Secretary, who is the campaign chief. Not only was she the campaign chief of the Makerfield by-election, she and Analyse Midgley, MP for Knowsley and a big organiser, they are running Andy Burnham's campaign. I said to Louise on camera, to Lou Haig, if there's a leadership challenge, are you ready? Emphatic, yes, we're ready. So what you're talking about, Harriet, is two very good political organisers, but more than just Lou and Analyse. There's a lot of Northern powerhouse women, as Andy Burnham put it, up in Makerfield behind him. They are organising. And what you're saying tallies with what I'm picking up, which is this idea that you get this bulk of the Labour parliamentary party to tell Starmer to stand down. You begin to mobilise ministers, and you just make it impossible for him in good conscience to stay on. And that definitely is their tactic. On Wes, I mean, this is what's so fascinating about it, which is if you ask the Burnham team, they'll admit it, Wes is a wild card in the sense that Andy Burnham can try and deal with Keir Starmer or try and come to some sort of accommodation or not. Andy Burnham does not want to trigger a leadership contest. He wants a coronation. He doesn't want to have to go into a big race. But then if Wes Streeton decides he's got the numbers he says he has, but he decides he wants to go and have, as he puts it, a battle of ideas, they're into a leadership race, whether the party wants it or not, and whether, Harriet, you want your idea of a hustings and then a quick decision. It's like it's not in the gift of Starmer or Burnham. It could get quite messy quite quickly, couldn't it?
Well, I think that it feels as if, although Wes Streeting is still making his case, and because you can never tell how things will work out until they've actually worked out, he's still putting himself forward. But I think a lot of the MPs and ministers feel really puzzled as to why the Prime Minister or his people are not in touch with them. They're kind of sort of waiting by their phones, and it's kind of respectful for Andy Burnham to be ringing them up and for his team to be ringing them up. They feel seen, they feel important, they feel included. He's talking to them, Wes is talking to them, and then they're thinking, but doesn't the Prime Minister know who I am? Why isn't the Prime Minister ringing me up? So I mean, think it's just quite puzzling.
To be fair to Keir Starmer, he did get a load of junior ministers in last week, didn't he?
But they felt threatened by that. You see, they didn't feel that he was asking for their support. But they felt he was saying to them, you better back me or I'm going to fire you.
I'm just saying,
so it didn't have a good, comradely kind of feel to it, that meeting.
Yeah, I'm just saying that he did do that. And then when we were at the G7, he actually, I think, had a call with colleagues whilst he was out there. So they are trying to win over the party. But it's what someone said to me that is close to Keir Starmer. They said, in all of this discussion, as Andy Burnham and his team sort of decide how it is going to go, they underestimate Keir Starmer's agency in it, in that if he does not want to go and he wants to dig in, then the party have to force him out. And that means mess, because it means resignations, it means the government collapsing, it means, dozens of MPs. Do you remember the days of chaos as Boris Johnson was gradually dragged out of number 10? And of course Andy Burnham doesn't want that, because he doesn't want to start his premiership under those terms. It would be disastrous for Labour, who had a go at the Tories, who made it really their entire election campaign about the chaos of the Tories, the irresponsibility of the Tories, the way they changed leaders, the disrespect to the country. And then Labour play that out. So Starmer, in a way, I guess the hope from the Burnham crowd is that Starmer, is too honourable to do that he would sort of read the writing on the wall, and in the interest of the country and the party, that he would make this dignified exit. But I just don't know what's in his mind. When I spoke to him at the G7, that was not a guy in any form that looked to me like he was going to walk away and allow Andy Burnham in, partly because I don't think Keir Starmer thinks that Andy Burnham would do as good a job as him. He might accept that Andy Burnham politically is a better communicator, that he can attract people, that he can connect with audience. But I think on the meat and bones of foreign policy, immigration policy, economic policy, I genuinely think Keir Starmer thinks he is a better Prime Minister than Andy Burnham would be. And if you actually, as Prime Minister, believe that, are you going to give way?
And I think he's also a constitutionalist in that he feels that he got elected, he became Prime Minister, and it's a 5-year term, and he's doing all these important things, including delivering on the manifesto, and therefore it's not right for him to walk away in the face of somebody who did not run for the leadership election at the time Keir Starmer ran for it, and who did not stand in the general election at the time when Keir Starmer became Prime Minister, and who's now come in a by-election. So having missed out all of those constitutional phases, somebody who's coming in a by-election and who thinks they're just going to take the prize, which Keir Starmer feels that he ran the race and he took the prize.
We're not entirely sure how it's going to play out, but Harriet, you said something intriguing earlier about some sort of D-Day at PMQs. What were you going to say before we got disrupted?
Well, I think there's various things that are going to happen which are going to focus attention. There's going to be Andy's swearing in on Monday, which will be a sort of huge event. There'll be the question of when he's going to make his maiden speech. I would imagine he would want to make his maiden speech in the House of Commons right away. You then get to Prime Minister's questions on Wednesday. Is Keir Starmer going to be doing Prime Minister's questions as if nothing's happening when Andy Burnham is sitting on the back benches? There'll be all the sightings of Andy Burnham in the tea room. I just think if you're concerned about good government, you need to be, whether you're Keir Starmer, Wes Streeting or Andy Burnham, if you're concerned about good government and not doing irreparable damage to the Labour Party, you want this to be done in a teamly way. And ultimately, politics and government is a team thing.
What you're saying is you think that the idea that this drags on...
I think it's going to come to a head.
It will come to a head quite quickly.
I think it needs to, because ministers need to be at work, at their desks and going around the country doing things, not actually involved in a long, drawn-out, knockdown struggle.
I mean, I do know that Andy Burnham has been whisked away, and he's going to spend some time with his family this weekend. He is, to quote one of his allies, on a vow of silence. So he is going to ground for a couple of days. The PM did say that he was going to speak to Andy Burnham next week. Andy Burnham's team said that he will speak to Starmer next week. So we need to wait and watch for that. But we cannot leave this pod. We cannot, without talking to Ruth, 2 trips in the minibus Davidson, about Aberdeen South. Bring it in, Ruth Davidson. Take it away.
So,
I mean, come on. What happened in Aberdeen South?
Well, I have to say there was a bit at the very start of this pod where Harriet talks about the unbelievable result of Andy Burnham in Makerfield. And I was thinking, it kind of was believable. He's quite a big name and it was already a Labour seat. In terms of talking about unbelievable results, Aberdeen South is the first Westminster by-election gain for the Tories in Scotland since 1967, since before I was born. We were coming from third. The SNP had a 4,000 vote head start. We cuffed them by 6,000 votes in the end. We had a 25% increase in the vote. We got up to nearly half the all voters there. We squeezed pretty much everyone. It was a 14.5% swing from the SNP to us in just 2 years. So it was a really big, really good result for us. It's put a pep in the step after a very difficult set of Holyrood elections for us. It's put a pep in the step of all the Scottish Conservatives. And I'm also having to eat a bit of humble pie. And I'll tell you why. Not because I didn't get involved and help out, and I did, and the whole party piled into Aberdeen South and ran an exemplary campaign. And Douglas Lumsden will make an excellent MP. But because I have previously criticised the work rate and tempo of Kemi Badenoch, and I'm going to have to be fair to her and say she really pulled out all the stops on this. She flew up 3 times in 5 weeks. She made sure when the coffers were empty, because we just fought a national Scottish Holyrood election, that there was money there to fight. She sent her chief executive up to be in Scotland for the entire time. That's the former Scotland director, my old director, Mark McInnes, who's now running CCHQ, to work with the Scottish director, James Tweedy. They worked very well together. She foregrounded oil and gas as the main sort of topic, which is what it was there. She made sure it was mentioned in Westminster. She was raising it in the chamber, so it was getting played back into the constituency in the seat. So to be fair to her, she absolutely leant into this one, and look at the result. And I think that as the only party that comes out of this with a gain, if we hadn't done that, there was a huge danger for us, which was, Andy Burnham is crowned King of the North. He marches on London. Reform come in second. We lose our deposit. And suddenly Farage says, oh yeah, but at least we're the challenge to the Labour Party and the Tories are no longer a national party, which is the line he's tried to use before. Actually, you can't use that now. And there is a template here for how to win in future. Really clear economic message, making sure you get the right candidates in the right place that are able to speak and are well known and are popular, as the way Douglas is, as a former council leader, a current MSP. There is a template here for how we can win back and how we can build in constituencies of place and also fight on the air war on constituencies of purpose. In this case, it was oil and gas.
Yeah, I mean, a massive win for the Conservatives. And given kind of the fortunes of the party of late, with Reform just kind of eclipsing the Conservatives in so many parts of the country. I mean, it really must have felt good, that win, Ruth. Must have felt good.
It did. And also one of the surprises as well is that the third by-election that happened, the Arbroath and Broughty Ferry one, nobody's really talked about because it was an SNP seat. It was likely to remain an SNP seat. It did remain an SNP seat. What was really interesting about it was that's the one that Labour were the challenger for. Yes, we were coming from third in Aberdeen South, but everyone knew it was us versus the SNP. What's really interesting is that Labour put a bit of resource into that and they fell from second to fourth. And the Tory vote went up and the Reform vote went up. And I think that picking over the bones in Scottish Labour of what's happened in both of these by-elections is really going to take some doing, because it's a canary in the coal mine, particularly coming so close after, again, for the sixth time in a row, votes and seats going down in the Holyrood election just sort of 6-7 weeks ago.
I mean, 3 fascinating by-elections, and actually I'd like to come back to the idea of progressive voters and what they did in Makerfield, because basically it became Andy Burnham versus Kenyon. The Greens, the Lib Dems, the Conservatives, they all just fell away, and it looked like there was massive tactical vote in there. And that, in a way, is why, I mean, the Burnham margin was much bigger than even the campaign organisers thought. So I want to come back to that and kind of ask the question a bit more, maybe get even Luke in to dig into what you just talked about there, Ruth, at the beginning about, is there a ceiling on Reform? But we have run out of time. That is it for today in this seismic week in British politics. We go again on Monday. Andy Burnham, Keir Starmer, let me have a day off, please. Please. I'm going to go. I'm going to go home for a lie down. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.